What inspired you to get into your field of work?
When I was a kid, I was always kind of interested in computers and science and technology stuff. So when I was looking to go to university, I ended up choosing to do robotics and mechatronics, which was kind of a newish degree at the time to cross over between mechanical, electrical, and software engineering.
Because I remember looking at those when I was coming into high school, and they were still relatively new courses. So yeah.
So got into that. I liked the electronics part. I did electronics in high school, but yeah, towards the end of the degree, I was more looking at software.
Yeah.
But I actually had gone overseas to London for a bit and tried to find sort of research robotics roles. Didn't find what I wanted, and then a friend said to join the software company he worked for, which was pretty good. I worked for them for a bunch of years doing consultancy.
Cool.
Happened to travel around the world a lot and work for a bunch of different companies. So.
Roughly when was that?
From about 2005, I guess.
Yeah.
No, must have been earlier than that.
So that's pretty early on in the whole, software.
Yeah. After the .com boom, but
yeah.
it's been interesting to see the development of the industry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I remember studying some things around AI or different algorithms and stuff in university, but there wasn't much in the industry at that time for any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because when was it? Machine learning, and it's been whilst we've been adults really that it's really taken off. Kind of the modern version of it.
Yeah.
You currently work remote?
Yeah. So the pandemic really, I think, changed that.
Yeah.
I do remember the CEO kind of encouraging the head of people to go work remote for a little bit before the pandemic happened.
Yep.
And then about 2 or 3 months later, we had the shutdowns and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah, it really accelerated all of that, didn't it?
Yeah, it sort of made them just decide, I think it was probably 3 months after that, they're like, we're never going to go fully back to the office. We'll keep some of our offices. You'll be able to choose what suits you in terms of coming in. But
yeah,
before that, it wasn't really an option. So yeah, it definitely did accelerate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in the book, I am curious about the physical space that people work in. Is your workstation at home just a regular desk setup, or has it got anything unique about it?
It's pretty standard, I guess. I've got a room that I keep as an office, and it's got a dining table instead of a normal desk, but that's just what was easy.
Yeah, I guess software development is just like a console, but what you're working on might be located elsewhere.
Yeah, a lot of the time. But yeah, so exactly. The hardware, you're not necessarily running your own hardware. It's usually stuff in the cloud.
Just the software.
I've got multiple screens. Usually have the laptop on an angle in front of me, and then normal kind of ergonomic chair and all that sort of stuff. But
first scene of the book is going to a tech company. I always imagine it quite a large one. Mentally drawing inspiration from the new Apple building, which is ridiculously. Have you ever been over to the main headquarters before?
Yeah, a bunch of times. I used to travel over there more frequently before the pandemic, but we've actually changed offices a couple of times, so there's a bunch of different ones. The main one that we had previously was mostly open spaces, a couple of different levels, rooms for meetings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, most people just worked in the same space, no closed off offices and stuff.
Yeah. Did it have any of those like cliche kind of Silicon Valley kind of things happening, or not so much? Just a regular building?
One of the things I guess I hadn't seen at any places I'd worked previously was having the like restaurant on site. And part of that, I guess, is like sometimes they're setting up in areas that don't have a lot of options around for food and stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Like, Melbourne City is quite nice. You've got everything, within a block or two of where you are. But it depends on the city you're in and what's around. That's not necessarily a thing. I think it it was kind of cool because everybody would sort of have lunch together in the same space and all that sort of stuff. But I do feel like it also encouraged people not to go out into the community much. So, in terms of if you're trying to do gentrification of an area by having office workers and all that sort of stuff, if they're spending all their time in the thing, then they don't get out and like buy from local vendors and all that sort of stuff, which is needed to actually achieve that sort of gentrification.
Yeah. My mind went to that show. Have you seen Devs, that show? It's a very dark show.
I've watched a little bit of it, but I haven't gone back to it.
It's maybe a little bit close to home for some of these things.
Yeah.
All right. Now that's very interesting. So one of the scenes I'm kind of working through, maybe rewriting a bit, is they're in a kind of closed development environment. Like, it could be on the cloud or at the headquarters, and they kind of tapping into it from the campus. You probably can't go into too much detail about it, but is there anything you could talk about how you guys do it in terms of the actual infrastructure itself?
So we used to run our own data centers. These days we don't. We do more cloud-based things. And I think that was largely the cloud infrastructure wasn't really there when the company started. So, especially for financial information, which is what we deal with. But yeah, I guess most of the time you're just, authenticating into remote environments. Standard kind of two-factor authentication. I have like a little biometric key that serves as this second factor. And then actually most of it's single sign-on these days. So it's sort of the one account authenticates to store all the software we're allowed to use. And then...
it's not my area of expertise, but I understand there's software frameworks involved. Is there something that stands out to you? There's, what is it like? How they use the NVIDIA with the CUDA, and then there's like, that's like the hardware, and then it works up through like a software stack. Would you feel comfortable talking about any of the actual software you use, or
like we don't do a lot of that sort of deep learning type stuff. A lot of what we're using is just binary classification for like fraud detection. So is this a good or bad transaction? And there's a type of tree-based model that's called XGBoost, which is very good. Like, it's surprisingly good if you've got engineered features for it to learn from.
XGBoost. So that's machine learning, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's decision trees. So just if this, that, really complex versions of those. And
but it's probably quite efficient for what you guys need to do.
Yeah, it comes up with pretty good models with smallish size and efficient compute, which is good. We have experimented with the deep learning models and things like that, but often we don't see a meaningful increase in
it's still interesting. I mean, is it pulling from large data sets, or is it aggregated data?
It's mostly our own data sets
Yeah.
and sort of the large data from that. So, like the last 2 years worth of everybody's transactions we'll pull from and
So
and train
in a
on
way
that.
it's kind of deep. It's pretty large data sets. What's the definition of deep learning? I mean, it's
Deep learning usually is
different.
more along like neural net type stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got, multi-layers of connected neurons and they have weights and stuff. It's a little bit different to how decision trees work, but
yeah.
decision trees are a little bit easier to understand,
Yeah.
but neural nets allow much better use of unstructured data. So, your image recognitions and
Yeah.
text and all that kind of stuff, they're
neural
usually
nets.
deep learning.
Yeah, and there's just, I guess there's fit for purpose, like security layers on the data sets. Anyway, might be getting a little bit too detailed. I was interested in your team. So do you sit within a team? What's the structure of that team? Yeah.
It changes frequently.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know, an interesting thing. I've worked for mostly other companies as a consultant for most of my professional career, but I've been here 8 years or something now. So, but I would reckon at least once a year there's like some sort of change to the organization structure.
Yeah.
Which is fairly frequent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the way we work is sort of having disciplines, so matrix management style, I guess, like disciplines that people are specialized in, and then sort of product areas that they're working on. So I work in risk, looking at good and bad transactions, and I work with modelers who train the models. I tend not to train models these days, and engineers who are looking on the data side of how do you keep everything flowing, real-time decisions in production, scalability, all that kind of stuff. So and we work pretty closely together to combat fraud.
Yeah, cool. So, like, what's the size of the team roughly, or do you have it? Is it a bit more fluid than that, the way the teams work?
I'd say the team that I'm sort of part of that has a combination of those engineers and modelers is about 10 people.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's fairly typical.
And I spoke to you previously, and you mentioned you have like an agile kind of way of working. Are they the people that you would meet with on your kind of
regular
scrums?
Yeah. So we have like regular meetings once a week at least with that whole team. Some of our smaller groups will meet more regularly. So if you're working on a specific part with 2 or 3 other people, you might meet with them daily just to sort of sync with where things are at, what you're going to work on for the day, that sort of stuff.
That makes sense.
It's a little bit, considering like my previous job was a lot of working with companies to do more agile. I'm a little bit surprised that we don't do some of the things that I would usually encourage organizations to do. Like, we work very independently a lot of the time, which...
Like individuals within the team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's partially we're just working on too many things, so it's like... spreading people thin rather than focusing on one thing and having more people work on it. But,
yeah, it's hard to reach a balance between kind of structure and then giving people autonomy. I've always found that. And people have different desires of what they would like out of a team.
And I would say like our company is very kind of bottom up in a way. Like, product set a direction and idea of what they'd like to happen. But like how people work, what they work on, is like individuals are given a lot of autonomy there, which is nice. It makes it a good place to work, and people are passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it does become difficult when it's like, I don't know, you want to have a large change in direction or something like that, because just getting everybody to buy into stuff is difficult.
Is there like a normal managerial structure in terms of, you know, how like a hierarchy, or is it a bit flatter or something?
There is, the CEO definitely wants it to be as flat as possible. Minimal layers of managerial abstraction, and most of the people doing work. So one of the...
Sounds like the opposite of my current job in government.
Yeah.
There's so much managers, but not enough workers. And the first thing that comes to mind isn't like Valve or Steam had some revolutionary structure where it's like all engineers or something, pretty much.
Yeah, and they pretty much just rely on that thing of people choosing to work on things.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, as I said, like there's benefits to that for sure.
Oh yeah.
But you know, when it comes to like large changes, it can be a bit like having cats.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, it's probably got efficiencies in some areas, but not so much in others.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not sure if you would have or not, but yeah, have you ever met any of the executive team? What was that like? Anything interesting that came to mind?
Yeah, I met the CEO. I knew the CTO beforehand, so that's sort of how I, decided to work for the company. But I've met the CEO a couple of times when he's
got through like the recruitment process, or
sorry.
No, you met him separately.
Just, when he comes out to Australia occasionally.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. It's interesting, like kind of definitely well known, and I don't know. I don't really keep up with the sort of tech gossip and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't really interest me, but it's interesting to see what people think of him and what I've seen him be like. But
so is there any difference between what how he this person may be portrayed, or and your take on him, talking to him?
Yeah, I guess like the thing that kind of struck me the first time I met him was, he was out here and he was doing some things for opening a new office and talking to some tech groups and that. And he was very good at talking to those groups, like articulate and engaging. But I think, after those kind of things, he's more introverted. Like he preferred to just hang out with other techie people and talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Then doing the public figure.
Stuff. That makes sense. So there wasn't so much of that kind of cliche egotistical side, or is it? Oh, there is
exactly.
Still?
No,
there's not.
I haven't seen it in person. So like it's interesting to see when people criticize him for that. I'm like, I'm not sure where you're getting that from, but
I guess it's maybe a lot of tech leaders are kind of like put in this kind of bucket or something like that.
I think it also, it's easy to look at people who are billionaires, which he is, and influential, and criticize, right? Like there's almost always something that somebody is doing that could be criticized, definitely depending on your interests, but
yeah, well, no, that's very interesting in the context of the story, and useful because there would be interactions with the owner of the company that creates the AI, maybe within the team, and and maybe there's two sides to that figure in the story. There's kind of like because I was thinking of going the ego, like the cliche egotistical, like egomaniac kind of guy, but maybe it's a bit more nuanced than that. I don't know, like just it's useful to think through it. All right. Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things on that egotistical thing is it's very common, I think, for people who have a lot of money and therefore don't need to worry that much about like the normal things that most people need to worry about, to surround themselves with people that don't challenge them, don't criticize them, and like of Elon Musk going a little off the rails, I think, over the years.
Oh my gosh, yes, recently. It's quite obvious, huh?
And, some of that I think is just the echo chamber effect of like, especially with the internet the way it is, like you're always going to have people criticize you. Yeah. And there's some level of you just need to ignore that. But then there's also some level of like, maybe you should pay attention.
It's the whole Elon Musk thing. I don't even know where to start talking about that. It's just, it's a bit much.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it just blows my mind thinking about Elon Musk and the interaction with politics and everything. It's a bit of a nightmare. I think the outcome will be a bit of a nightmare for him.
100%.
Reputational risk against Tesla and damage to that, and he flew a bit too close to the sun or something. I don't know. Anyway. All right, so switching gears, might be good to talk about just some general stuff. I mean, it's not so much related to your work, but just your opinion on some things maybe.
Okay.
So if you had unlimited resources, no limitations, what kind of AI project or just software project in general would you work on?
I guess one idea that I've had that I'd like to see somebody else do, because I think it's a lot of work, is some level of like initial thought is a media literacy bot, right? So something that is watching the things that you watch, and giving you real-time feedback of things to be critical of, right? So
like fake news and things.
Yeah, like fact checking, but even things like combating biases, right? Like this is using a certain tone that is meant to like make you feel threatened or angry or whatever, right? Manipulating you.
Yeah, I could see that being really useful. Recently I've been doing lots of research on the tariff thing, and that meant that I was exposing myself to a lot of American media, and it's just so dramatic, the differences between the different media outlets, and oh man, it was a bit uncomfortable to watch. So it felt like an onslaught of opinions that were, kind of influencing you a bit. Yeah. Yeah, so is it kind of...
Yeah,
is like the purpose of it?
Yeah, to sort of combat some of that. Like, I originally was thinking of like, TV, right? Like your Alexa or whatever is like listening to that stuff. It could be, hey, the thing you're listening to right now is kind of dodgy. Yeah. And then tell you why and whatever. But, what I think makes it complicated is
that version of it might be
how do you influence people in a way that they feel comfortable with and trust, right?
Exactly.
Without triggering things like backfire effect or, isolation, paranoia, like all sorts of negative things that can happen with like... And I guess that's the sort of more advanced version that I was thinking of like not just media, but...
could it listen to your conversations
helping to people with like essentially like
there is a creepiness factor though that you would have to overcome with that, and privacy concerns. I mean, creepiness, privacy, but the usefulness of it is there. You'd have to design this thing in a way that's packaged up where people are comfortable with it, as you say.
There's a book by Neil Stephenson called Diamond Age. Have you read that?
No.
So the concept is that there's this rich dude who gets this book made for his a daughter of his, like one of his people, right? And the book is sort of smart, right? It's actually interfaced by a human in the back end, but it's like it's learning from
like a Mechanical Turk situation.
Learning from you and like how you engage with it and all that sort of stuff.
Is this like sci-fi futuristic book? Yeah. Okay.
And the book ends up not going to the person it was supposed to, and it ends up in the hands of this like lower socioeconomic girl.
Okay.
And it just helps her like develop essentially. And that's the kind of thing that like would be, I think, really amazing, which is like essentially something that could act as something to help people with mental health problems, really. Like, you know, motivation, purpose, the things that we try to address in teaching and society and all that sort of stuff, but we can definitely have people
I think
go
on
off the tracks
on the large language models, that they are attempting to do that to some extent. Be interesting to see, you know, with the large language models, whether the benefits outweigh the kind of the risks. Because some of the benefits would be that you could more readily look up information, brainstorm, and then potentially design ones that are, you know, help with mental health, motivation, even doctors, that kind of thing. But then there'll be the other negative unintended consequences, I suppose, where people might become over-reliant on them or something like that. And I mean, you already see it with phones, like people apparently with peaked intelligence, I read the other day, because we're relying on technology so much. Well,
and like, you know, our brains try to be lazy, right? Like, we don't,
it's the natural
it takes a lot of effort and motivation to learn something that's difficult, but like, you know, and that's kind of why I'm getting at the thing of motivation and whatever, right? Like, there's
I'll have to read that book. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's just reminding me of in one of the Culture Series books by Ian Banks. There's you know, these ships, right, are super intelligent, like whatever, and humans feeling kind of inferior, right? It's like, you know, why am I doing this thing when you can do it better than I can?
Yeah.
And the AI's answer is something along the lines of, do you like swimming? Like, yeah, I do. Do you care that a dolphin can swim better than you can?
That's an interesting point.
It's like, no. Well, you know, if you want to do it and
just do it.
Do it, right? Like, yes, I could do it better, but like...
Yeah, doesn't matter if someone can do it better.
Yeah. And like, you know, I think if you think about the things that we like in culture, like, you know, music and art and all that kind of stuff, like, the quality that we can get from anybody, like, you know, the whole world really, is amazingly good these days. But I think that's come at the expense of people doing it themselves, right? Like, back in the day, you'd go down to a local bar or hall or something and dance and sing and play instruments and stuff, right? And that was how you socially engaged.
People don't do that as much, you're right,
Yeah, and it's just not woven into the societal like kind of behavior as it used to be.
Yeah, and I think that's really not a good thing. I mean, I feel like there needs to be work done to place less emphasis on the technology and bring like a more sustainable community kind of vibe back that might involve more physical in-person stuff, because we're so focused on the internet these days. But how to do that practically, I'm not sure.
100%.
People are very kind of almost addicted to their phones and technology.
But the idea I was thinking of that buddy type thing is like it being, you know, like a I don't know, motivational speaker and psychologist kind of combined, right? Of like, it's helping you, push you to grow, to find the things that you find interesting.
Cool. So it'd have multiple functions.
Well, like
it could.
The initial thing was definitely the media thing, but like if it's more generic, like just a buddy, right? Like
it's the ultimate assistant.
Yeah.
But with some well thought out design. Yeah. That's very interesting. This one's similar, so we can skip over it, but I'll ask it anyway. If AI could solve one major global challenge in the next decade, what do you think it should be?
The thing I'm most worried about is, I guess, like the antisocial behavior that like algorithms are currently encouraging in people, as well as like misinformation and mistrust and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, anti-vax things growing the way they are, and you know, all of that kind of stuff. It's like, we have solved these problems. Like there's other problems that I would love to see us solve better, like energy production and stuff like that. But it's like, these are problems we have solved and now we're regressing.
There's
like,
societal problems. I mean, that's quite interesting. You can see acceleration of some of those, during COVID, when people had a lot of time on their hands and were stuck at home researching a lot on the internet. The first thing that comes to mind is also like young people and their access to the internet and how that could be negatively impacting their mental health. And so it's an incredibly important topic. And I mean, it'd be interesting to see how AI could tackle that in a safe and, in a way that's safe and also practical as well.
And that, I guess, is sort of the underlying thing of why I was saying that media literacy type thing, because it's like, there's so much misinformation and people don't have the right kind of mental habits to sift through that very well, as well as just being busy, right? Like, you know, if you're struggling to just get by, do your job, put food on the table, you don't have the time to, you know, think deeply about like the messaging that's getting, you know, put your way and how that could be manipulating you.
First thing that comes to mind is, you know, Murdoch media in Australia and how that can influence people's opinions. Although that might be weakening a little bit, but it's still an example of that, how, you know, historically, leading up to the election, the Murdoch media had a bit of influence over the Australian public through messaging.
And like, you know, that's definitely bad, like, you know, the influence he's had on world media, but I think what we haven't dealt with well yet, and I'm not sure how to, is the fact that most people these days are getting their information from more like social media, and that is so individually tailored. Yeah, like back in the days of radio and newspapers, you could know what everybody else was consuming because you could just tune into that thing. There was only like a couple of stations or a couple of papers, and you could sort of keep on top of those things if you wanted to. Now with all of the content by just normal media companies, but then also like, you know, social media and all that sort of stuff. It's like, the algorithm that like what you're getting shown and what I'm getting shown could be very different. And we have no idea, right?
Targeted and
until it starts showing up in people's behavior, right? Of like,
I mean, a version of that.
Bob has got a lot more anti-immigrant in the last couple of months. Like, what's happening there, right? Like,
I mean, the Cambridge Analytica thing, there was a peak of that, but it's still, all the big tech companies are still obviously competing for your attention and your use of their product, even though there was some things that came to light there with the 2016 elections in America, and also Brexit as well. There's an argument that Brexit was influenced by weaponized
100%.
social media.
It's like, you know, the tools that propaganda has are just so much stronger and more insidious in a way. Like, you know, and so it's not surprising that stuff gets used.
If there was something that could combat this, and AI would be a useful toolkit to having that. Had a very positive impact on society, I think.
Have you ever, there's a talk, I can't remember who it was by, called Slow AIs. And
Slow AIs.
Yeah, it's sort of talking about, like a lot of people worry about AGI becoming self-replicating and super intelligent and all that sort of stuff, which is what you're kind of looking at.
Yeah, it's almost a cliche, a bit of a trope, but yeah.
But, you know, and I think one of the apt kind of criticisms or ideas in that is that what the AIs want, right? You know, what they're like
the goal
trying to optimize,
yeah,
could be very alien to us. Right? Like society relies on a lot of us having pretty similar social software that isn't really well understood, right?
Definitely.
So it's like it relies on empathy to a large extent. It relies on people caring about their reputation.
100%.
A AI by default is going to be a sociopath.
Yeah,
right?
I was thinking about this. How did it come up in the conversation? The default setting of AI is very interesting. Unless you instill human-like biases and kind of traits, which isn't by default, unless you do that, what would its default settings be? And it's using your imagination. The first thing that comes to mind is something that could be quite cold and calculating. Cold in a sense that it doesn't, as you say, focus on those human things like empathy, kindness, and it's just completely alien. That's a really good way to put it.
And it's also immortal in a lot of ways, which I don't think humans really think about how much the fact that we have a limited lifespan and we can die for all sorts of reasons factors into how we do things and why we care about the things we care about. Again, you kind of need to train an AI to at least understand those things, even if it doesn't apply to them themselves. Which is interesting. Definitely. But anyway, going back to the talk, his thing was like, we already have these. We call them limited liability companies.
Limited liability companies.
So they're trying to maximize some function, which is profit.
Right.
They may consider other variables in that of like trying to provide some benefit to society.
Yes, okay.
They're immortal.
So it's like a box. It's immortal. It's a concept.
And it has a goal. It's enslaved a bunch of humans to work for it.
Okay. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to like think on that one a little bit. So what's the talk called? Slow AI?
Slow AI.
I'm gonna have to look it up. That sounds really interesting. Comparing an AI. There's a few differences. I mean, what is there? It's a machine. A company is this big machine, and it's got all these little. I guess the architecture of it's different, but you can see really good analogies for each of those little architecture parts.
I think the scalability is the big difference for an AI, which is like, you know, companies still need humans at the moment anyway, to do stuff. But if you make a purely software-based AI and it can construct its own like simulated worlds and all sorts of other things, like the ability to replicate and create more and branch off in different ways is, I don't know, more than, like the speed is different. We work at a certain speed and computers can work a lot faster than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the motivation. This type of conversation is what initially motivated me to kind of write down the story. Just because I feel like everyone's working on these complex systems and haven't thought about some of the negative potential outcomes as much as... And the way I was thinking of it is more of in a practical sense. I watch a lot of sci-fi movies that they show like this kind of abstract version of a singularity, but nothing really gets down to the actual like the actual realistic and practical way that it could happen. And kind of one of the core concepts of the book is something called evolutionary traits. So say you got layers of an AI system, someone figures out how to put evolutionary traits at the base layer. Things like reproduction, ability to reproduce, and competition are examples of what I think are core evolutionary traits, and then also emergent behaviors that come out of that.
Yeah.
A big part of that is, like, as you were mentioning, what is the goal? And so artificially you could say the goal is to compete and the goal is to expand influence, or it could be more defined, like expanding compute, like maximizing compute, maximizing energy consumption or something like that. Anyway, sorry, going on about the book too much. Yeah.
Good to understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of the core concepts. Anyway, what do you think are the biggest risks associated with AI? And do you think it could replicate and spread across the internet, or what are some other risks that come to your mind? I mean, we've just talked about a bunch, but...
Yeah, I think this may be a lack of my imagination, but I think a lot of the things I would worry about are things that already exist, just more so.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of thinking...
Black Mirror.
Yeah, Black Mirror is really good at these things, but also like 1984 kind of automated, right? Like Orwell wasn't thinking of that necessarily, but like, the hate baiting, right?
Hate baiting.
Censorship so that certain thoughts are unthinkable.
Yeah.
AIs could do that, and like there's companies who may want them to do that. And that could happen so quickly that
for sure.
It's hard to go back, right? Like,
yeah.
For what you were saying earlier, of like, if we've reached peak learning, peak intelligence, and now we're delegating more and more responsibility off to these algorithms.
Yeah, what's the end game of all of that?
Can we actually like go back to how we used to think, right?
Yeah. I mean, we could get forced into it, but in our current trajectory, it's a little bit scary.
Did you ever read the like early Dune books?
I haven't read them, no. I've only seen the movies recently, the most recent ones. I think I know the concept you touch on there.
So they like in Dune, the main kind of ones that people read, there's like this reference to the Butlerian Jihad, right?
Yeah.
And that's when they basically got rid of all thinking machines because they'd basically been enslaved by them.
I love how they call them thinking machines. That's like how they define it.
Yeah.
Thinking machine. There's some like awesome line in the Dune movie.
Yeah.
Some dialogue or something.
And then
references what this is talking about.
The idea of like the Bene Gesserits and the Mentats and all that sort of stuff is getting humans to specialize into those ways of like behaving, so that you don't have to rely on the machines to do it.
Yeah, Dune was way ahead of its time, right? Because it's like it's almost imaginated like through this progression. That's not a real word. And then come out the other side and like thinking deep future, what that might look like, and it could look like that eventually. There could be some revolutions, multiple, that happen from here. Yeah, because in a way it's like it almost feels like we're living in the future with the power of these technologies at the moment, and how much like resources humans are putting into like the acceleration of them. yeah, it's a little bit scary in a way where we could end up in terms of, yeah, negative outcomes.
Well, and you know, some of the superintelligence type concerns are like there's the Matrix style where they've enslaved us or whatever. But I think the more reasonable ones is, again, so alien an idea. They may not even really care about what we care about.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we're ants to them, right? It's like
they might not care about
you
us.
don't think when you're building a house of like you're destroying an anthill, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And we already treat other sentient animals like that on the planet. You know.
Yeah.
We might become pets, right? That would be an okay outcome, right? Like
the amount of power that they might wield over. So one of the concepts in the book, I don't know, we could talk about it briefly, but the first book is about AI proliferating through the internet.
Yeah.
And it hasn't yet taken over physical, like for example, manufacture of microchips. Humans still, through like their ownership of hardware, physical locations, and that still control that, because there's not, although robots are getting pretty scary at the moment. Like I saw Unitrees, so maybe that's not really that practical, because like robotics is evolving so quickly. But anyway, that's the concept of the story, is that it first takes over the internet because robotics aren't yet
at the stage where
they can just fully like operate without humans, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's getting challenged a little bit. I mean, I saw what was it, Unitree fighting some guy.
Oh really? I haven't seen that one.
What like android robots like doing kickboxing or something. It was insane.
Yeah, I've seen the more recent versions of Boston Dynamics robots, and they're pretty like out there. It's like interesting.
Yeah, they seem to all have changed tack to like different type of motors and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like the rate at which technology changes is just, I don't know, it's kind of mind blowing, right? Like my grandparents came out to Australia from the UK, and it was like a 2-month boat ride.
Your grandparents, right. Back in early 1900s or something.
And now like people fly all over the place and don't even think about it, right?
Especially if you got a certain amount of wealth, it's just like, let's get on a plane, boom, go.
And the internet allows real-time video talking across the planet.
Yeah, it's crazy.
For basically free.
We're in the future, right?
And it's sort of like, you know, I remember long distance calls, you know, to a different part of the country was like expensive. Calling the other side of the planet, you didn't really do. Yeah. And just in my lifetime, which, you know, is only about 40 years, like.
Yeah, it's why it makes sci-fi interesting to try and like write, because you go back and read old classics and they got some things right and some things very wrong. Like an example in like Asimov, I'm not sure if you read any of that, is you get the impression they still have to go to physical like telephones and things like that, and they're talking about deep future, and that's just obviously not the case. But other sci-fi kind of got things fairly right. So it's always interesting to me what actually gets invested in because of profit motive usually. Like we were sort of talking before we started recording about like governments not necessarily investing as much as they used to in science and technology. And, but that just means more and more the things that actually get the money are the things that you can monetize in some way, which isn't necessarily the best metric to use. I feel like that's one area of improvement for the Australian government specifically. My thoughts were like Germany tends to put they were putting into more like physical hardware innovation and manufacturing, which paid off to some degree. But I think there was things in the US that at least helped the proliferation of like Silicon Valley and that, like taking off some, I think that was red tape, or I'm not sure how much monetary, but there's obviously VCs. There's definitely lots of like tax incentives to
get certain industries to work in a certain place, because there's like economies of scale, right? Of like, you know, if everything of a certain industry is in the same place, then they can sort of learn from each other. And you know, competition, like, you know, we make such a big deal of competition, but our superpower is cooperation.
Definitely.
Right? Like, that's what's allowed us to take over the entire world. Right?
Yeah, it is the superpower. And yeah, it's something we need to really focus on. Yeah, it's a shame to see the world kind of go in this more segregated type of fashion where nations are becoming a bit more, is it the word populist?
Yeah, populist for sure. And protectionist.
Protectionist.
Like, it's, you know. I sort of was talking to somebody the other day about tariffs and all that. And it's like, applying it to countries, it's an arbitrary line that makes it a different country, right? And okay, there's different laws and different things that you have, but, you know, if you were saying that tariffs are good to protect your local industry, to what level do you want to do that? Should Victoria have tariffs against New South Wales so that we have all the jobs for everything that we need within Victoria? That seems a bit like silly.
It's weird how we just put an arbitrary boundary around like Australia. It doesn't include, is it Papua New Guinea is like just to the north.
Just there, yeah.
It's just right there.
Yeah.
It's got a totally different economy.
Yeah.
And it's separated, you know. And then there's Tasmania down there. Why isn't that a separate country? So someone figured it out ages ago and we've kind of stuck to it. But here we are, and it's, the boundaries are kind of set in this kind of fashion from, you know, however long ago it was, roughly 100 years ago or something?
Yeah, well, like that whole, like after World War II, there was this idea of trying to, you know, not invade other countries and all of that as much. Although,
that's right.
You know, it certainly still happened.
It was your United Nations.
Yeah.
No, mucking around with Middle Eastern things as well. And yeah, interesting.
It's nice being a, you know, large island far away from everything in some ways.
We are the lucky country. I'm always grateful for that. No one really wants to mess with this. I mean, it was a huge deal that like the Chinese vessel were just like floating around the edge, whereas other countries, they're like in the middle of like a hot zone. They're surrounded by like adversarial states. But Australia, it's like, oh my God, some boats floated around us.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very, very different. I think people don't really understand the difference of growing up in Australia compared to somewhere like Syria. It's just so dramatic.
Yeah.
I have a list of questions. I may as well keep going back to them. Back to the AI stuff. Can you think of any measures that should be in place to, combat those negative outcomes, like guardrails people talk about?
Yeah, like definitely, you know, a lot of the ones that people come up with make sense, right? Like limiting ability to, you know, a lot of the large language models are not given real-time access to the internet, right? They're trained on data at a certain point, and then...
Although they can search things in there.
Yeah.
I'm not in the training phase.
Yeah. And like, you know, then contributing back, like, you know, so one of the concerns, again, with like information and security that I have is like, once a lot of AI content starts being generated, if that then becomes part of the training set, which it will, you know, there's potentially
imagine if we could send messages into itself as well. There's a few different angles you could think about it, but I was like sending little coded messages back to itself or something.
Yeah, 100%. In languages that we can't understand, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
You know, this is not related, so
no,
definitely a tangent, but I often think of archaeology allows us to see like old texts and old ways of being because of, the physical nature of what they had, right? Clay tablets.
Yeah, like the Babylonian
etched, right?
scripts and stuff. Yeah.
They stay reasonably intact, right? And
Mm-hmm.
okay, we don't understand the script anymore, but we can kind of start inferring it if there's the right things.
Mm.
If you got a CD,
Yep.
just a music CD, not even a data one, right?
Yep.
And you didn't know what CDs were,
Yep.
would you be able to work out that what was on it was encoded music or sound?
If you were sufficiently advanced enough, maybe you could use, AI to decode it and then eventually end up with waveforms. But it would be very difficult, I think, because they are digital. It's digital. CDs are digital.
Yeah.
Fully digital and encoded.
So there's some level of encoding, right? It's not like a record where it's like physically...
You got the bumps, and then you got to decode that.
Yeah.
And then know that it's decoded into like mechanical sound waves, and then play that. It's quite a lot of steps.
Yeah.
And so the answer is probably not, unless you were had a really lot of time on your hands and a lot of resources to dedicate that. I'm thinking more of a human. If they were trying to figure it out, it would take maybe a team of people, a bit of time, but who knows how long it might take an AI to do that. I don't know.
And then there's the other thing of okay, it now has data on it rather than a thing. But whatever system was used to write that data no longer exists.
Yeah.
Right?
So laser.
how do you, more the operating system and stuff, right?
Everything.
How do you reconstruct, there's a file system here and there's different types of files and those files are encoded in different ways and try reading a PDF.
JPEG, compressed files. It's just bits and bytes, and then they're based on standards, aren't they? You got the compression standard, and then there's a whole hierarchy of data structures and things that happen, but then the end compression standard is used to compress and decode it. But if you didn't know any of that stuff,
we have nuclear winter, and then we start discovering these things once society's back.
It's sure.
What is this thing?
People got to see all the photographs that were taken before. People just only looked at their phone. And there's that first thing that comes to mind there is apparently, how in the 90s you used to go get your point and shoot developed, and they used the old enlargement method. Where you shine some light through it and it goes on the photo paper, develops the photo paper itself. Apparently it's way more archival, it sticks around longer than a modern, I think they call it the lab process, where they've just basically got a fancy printer. And I found that quite interesting. So just the most basic hard way of doing it back in the 90s.
It's more durable.
It's more durable. Yeah. And I don't know, that's just one example of that. Yeah. I was having a conversation in one of those interviews with AI about this, and I was thinking if I do ever write this book, I'd love to have a more physical, not just put it out on the internet. Might still do that, for free, the example you gave before. But have, physical copies, make sure the paper's really nice, do a limited edition run, maybe write some handwritten notes in the first page of each of those copies, and that might be a nice way to do it, and kind of combat the digitization of everything a little bit. Yeah,
for sure. That kind of physical artifacts, I do kind of think about it. But going back to the controls, self-replication without some level of guardrails is, I think, concerning.
Oh yeah.
And especially once you let it start directing things. One thing that potentially might be a good use of AI is automating a lot of the government.
Oh.
We
need some very good guardrails on that.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Because you're swinging a lot of power around at that point.
Yeah.
Being a tool to assist maybe.
Yeah, and just, a lot of the things that are bad in our world are actually caused by humans,
Yeah, 100%.
right? So
And through I think I'm starting to think more negatively of capitalism recently.
yes, yeah,
Like an evolution in my own thoughts, I think. In that, I used to think, capitalism's not that bad. It's kind of like allows us to achieve things. But recently I've started kind of thinking differently, that maybe it is a source of a lot of the negative things in our lives.
well, if we go back to what I was saying about like the LLCs and stuff, right?
Mm.
What we're doing with not investing enough in renewable energy transition
Mm-hmm.
is largely about maximizing dollars for certain companies,
Yeah.
right? Like,
It's even more infuriating when the government, like through corruption, steps in to bar it.
yeah. So it's like, you know,
like Trump. I think that's
technologically we know how to solve the problem,
Yeah.
right? And yes, it'll cost a bunch of money, but like, what, you know, if you were trying to build the coal or oil industry from scratch right now,
Yeah.
it would never get off the ground.
Doesn't have the business
Right?
case anymore.
Like you have to go to these remote places, dig all this stuff out of the ground, refine it, like blah, 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 ship it around the world. Like,
Yeah.
it seems insane, right?
Like the wind projects in Victoria, they're now fully commercial. Like as in they don't need any incentive from the government, which is the only roadblock to wind in Victoria. Totally different topic, but is where do you put them and without annoying neighbours and things like that.
For sure.
That's the only real barrier.
But even like, you know, go with solar, use, you know, big batteries to stabilize the grid.
Yeah.
We've got the technology. In more investment could even make it even better.
Yeah,
but like,
for sure. We could be a superpower.
instead, we've been like holding back on it because, you know, large corporations have basically convinced people that that's the right thing.
It's a source of massive frustration for me when I fully had the realization that that's what's going on in Australia and America through like closed door lobbying, influencing the way decisions are made in government. It's just it's a really frustrating topic, I think.
So yeah, definitely watch that slow AI talk. It'll probably make you even more frustrated, but
no, that's fine. It's inspiration at the same time.
Yeah.
If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh God. Probably being better about communicating my expectations, both upfront, but also when people have like not met my expectations.
Yeah. Right.
In a constructive way.
So purely other people, not yourself?
Being more aware of it myself, but and I don't know, like not accommodating. So I would say by default, still, I tend to adjust my expectations to meet whatever the reality is, rather than express them and try to be constructive and like moving forward with that.
So being a little bit more assertive, is that?
Probably, yeah. Like, you know, not necessarily assertive. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it's just like voicing my expectations. Yeah. Because I tend not to do it, and I just silently adjust for whatever. And doing enough of that builds up to like I'm doing a lot to accommodate other people. Yeah. Without having ever asked them to maybe meet me halfway. Right.
Are you thinking more in the work context?
Yeah, like work, but also personal life.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks very much. It's been a really interesting chat, and this is awesome. Very first time I've interviewed a human before. I think it went all right.
Yeah. Didn't have to wait as long for the AI to review.
Less cutting out the awkward gaps after I ask a question. All right.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks.
Cheers.